This is The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. I share stories from real people who have already been through some hard stuff. Why? So that you don't feel alone while you're busy figuring out your own life. Let's do this. Welcome to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm here today with Kimberly Tara. Kimberly, are you ready for a fun chat today?
I'm so excited for this. It's kind of different from the podcast interviews I normally do.
I love it. I love it. I love it when people tell me I'm different. All right. So here we go. Starting off with the same question that I ask everybody. What part of the world do you call home, and what's something you love about living there?
Yeah. So I newly call the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina in the US home, born and bred in New Orleans. And something that I'm loving about it right now. So we are in the summer months and we woke up to 66-degree weather this morning. And it was an opportunity to have a conversation with my kiddos about the pros and cons of living in different places. And a pro is that right now it's 66 and like low humidity outside and it's beautiful.
I love that. I love that answer. I do. I
I
do.
know
I
you
do.
understand that.
I love that answer. I do. All right. My next warm up question that I ask everybody is a workaround, a sneak around question, which maybe as a woman raised in the South, you will identify with. I was told you're never supposed to ask people their age, but it is a way that people align in the new information. So now I ask people, which of these generation descriptions do you match? Silent generation, baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, or Gen Z?
Well, I think technically I'm a millennial. I'm going to be 36 this year in a month. I don't hide my age. I just own it. So I'm pretty sure that makes me a millennial. I'm 1990, but probably in my soul, I'm probably more Gen X.
Oh, interesting. All right, very good. And the reason I ask this question so that everybody knows is it's feeding information so that people can find what they're looking for. Like one of the goals of my show is to cross those generational divides when
Yep.
it's helpful, right?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
the best time, and that feeds into this, because the best time to get financial information about something you're doing is before you need it. Is before
Hmm.
you need it, right? So, Kimberly, today we're going to talk about career change
Okay.
and choices and decisions about careers. Let's start with this. What did you study when you were in school? Like, what was it that you studied that you thought was going to be the path for your career?
Good thing. Yeah. So I actually, as a sophomore in high school, sitting in my chemistry honors class, nerd alert, yes. I thought I was going to be a chemical engineer because you can either be a chemistry researcher or a chemical engineer when you love chemistry. And I did not. You'll learn very quickly. I don't sit in a room all day by myself. I need to be around people. So I was going to be a chemical engineer, right? It made good money. It was innovative. So I went to Auburn University to study that. 3.5 years in, realized that I didn't love it, all the other engineering aspects that came with it. And I was ultimately trying to get my bachelor's in chemical engineering and then get my MBA. And so I had this just life shattering moment where I had to admit sort of this failure to myself that I no longer wanted to do that. I had had 2 internships. I had done 3.5 years of classes and I just didn't love it the way that you needed to love it to get through that curriculum. It's very difficult. And I sat in an accounting class for non-business majors and I was having these feelings of this. I don't want to do engineering, but I don't know what else I would do. I haven't thought about anything else for 5 years. And when I sat in that class less than 2 weeks in, I knew it was for me. I switched from the College of Engineering to the College of Business, and I have never looked back after I got through all of the cries and the moments and the feelings that I had to work through.
So that is really interesting. And that is not actually the pure topic that you pitched. But my focus on these things and these conversations is always about the choices and the decision because we tend to tell transformation stories in our life and life goal stories with the destination. It's a great story. It's the hero story. It's like, look at where I ended up and how
Hmm.
I got there. But this is a really, really powerful part of a lot of people's stories. And it's really funny because once you're through it, you realize that a lot of people have this in their educational story the day that they were
Yes.
like, you know what, I am not going to be this. But when you're in it, when you're in it, when you're in school, you think you're the only person that's done it, and you tend to internalize it, right? And
Yep.
think, oh, if I change now, I've done something wrong.
Yes.
There's something wrong with me. So, what was it that you liked? Chemistry?
I liked chemistry.
You liked chemistry, and
And I was
I
good
think
at it.
yes,
And
and
I'm
you
a
were good
type A
at it.
high achiever, so I like being good at everything.
And then so but you're obviously a type A person that you're like, what's the job that attaches to this?
Of
So
course.
you went
Yeah.
into engineering school,
Mhm.
and that makes a lot of sense. And if I understand the story right, you were 3.5 years into this before you realized you're like, no, I actually don't like the job that matches this study. Is that the right sequence of events?
That is correct. And I would say, a lot of people go into engineering because it seems glamorous. It makes a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Parents do it. So a lot of my classmates were sort of pushed into it by their parents that they needed to do that. We had a lot of ROTC members in there because it was one of the approved curriculums. And so a lot of them didn't make it past the first 12 months, but I was in it to win it, right?
Yeah, no. And then how much, if you remember, because this has been a hot minute since you did this, when you made the
Thank you
switch.
for that reminder,
Sorry,
Amy.
sorry, but how much did it add to your study time to make the switch from an engineering program to a business program? And the school has changed a lot. I have kids I have an engineer actually who just finished an engineering program, and watching her go through school, it was really clear how different it was, and seeing all of her friends announce their degrees and their specialties, that has changed a lot since I was in school. But how much did it add to your study time to make that change after 3 years?
Yeah, so it added a summer of study and an extra semester
Oh,
because for
okay, not
chemical
much.
engineering and with two internship rotations in there, it was already a 5-year program with the number of hours that I needed. So it only extended me by one semester. I took a summer where I worked and took classes. And then because I had to go back to some of the beginning with
Yeah.
like the business 101s, I was able to take 18 and 21 hours those semesters because it was quite frankly a joke compared to my junior level engineering classes. So, I mean, it
Okay.
probably could have been a year if I didn't do those things, but for me, it really wasn't a whole ton. The worst part was actually, Amy, that I lost a lot of my discipline specific scholarships because I was
Okay.
in engineering, because I was a woman in engineering. And so all of those engineering specific scholarships I lost. And so I would say I incurred basically the same amount of debt post switch that I did in the first 3.5 years because I lost so many scholarships.
Yeah. No, education is expensive. Higher
It's,
education is
yes,
expensive. Very,
yes.
very much. Okay. So you make this change. I'm so glad I asked that question, because sometimes that's just like a filler question, get to know you question,
Mhm.
but this is a pretty big part of your story. And I think
Pretty
that's
pivotal part
important.
of my story.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go. So in the information you gave me, you shared that after you graduated, you went into public accounting. And I think that means that you're working for a pretty big accounting firm, but I'm not actually sure. Can you tell us what that means and what the career path that you went on once you graduated after switching your degree?
Yeah, so a big thing that I knew with switching my career, especially so late in the game, staring down $100,000 of student loans that needed to be paid back, right? I knew that I needed to become a certified public accountant. I needed those three letters, that designation behind my name, because even though I've seen a lot of CPAs not do good things, that designation, that licensure does hold a lot of weight behind it. So, in order to do that, you have to study under another public accountant as part of, you have to take all of the exams, you have to have 2,000 hours, all of the things, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where it's like, it's just the trajectory. Like, if you're going to be in accounting and you want to make it and you want to learn and you want to like have these credentials behind you, you need to go into public accounting. One thing that I did do differently, so it was, you probably remember, back in your day, it was like the big eight. It was the big
Yes.
four. It
Yeah,
still
yeah.
is the big four. It still is the big four now. And so I
They've
actually
changed their
did,
names, so go ahead and list them so that people
they changed
understand.
their names.
Right. So
They
it used to
changed.
be
We've
Arthur
lost a bunch along the
Anderson.
way.
What are they now?
So right now it's KPMG,
KPMG,
Deloitte, Ernst
Deloitte.
and Young, and I'm PwC,
And
PricewaterhouseCoopers are the 4.
PricewaterhouseCooper. All right. So, right. And
Yep.
that
So
those are important. Yeah.
those
Those
are
are still
important.
important.
I did interview with Deloitte, but ultimately I decided I didn't want to go to one of the big 4 because when I was in engineering, I interned with BASF, which is the leading
Oh,
chemical
yeah.
chemical company in the world. And so like would have had opportunities to move to Germany, things like that. So I felt that large corporate culture from my internships there. And I
Yeah.
knew, look, the accounting's the accounting. We follow GAAP principles, we follow the IRS, right? Like the rules are the rules that you have to follow. And so I decided to go with a medium sized growing firm based out of Atlanta because I didn't want that large corporate culture. I wanted to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond because I felt like the opportunities to learn would be better. And it just fit my longer term goals that I had at the time that wound up being different. We can talk about that. So I actually went with a medium sized, what is classified as a medium sized public accounting firm in Atlanta.
Well, I think that this is a very good example of the fact that you are clearly a planner. I would love to go back and meet the 16-year-old you and give you a skills assessment and see where it lined you up because they're both two intentional plan things, accounting and engineering. It's fascinating to hear you talk about it at such a young age that you were able to look at a big picture and be like, you know what, this is this trajectory, but I'm going to go over here. It's just not something all of us are able to do.
Mhm.
I am one of those people who I have some ideas and then sometimes I put myself in a spot and I'm like, oh, wait. Now that I'm here, I
And it's so funny because
see.
like I am so relaxed now 4 kids later. And at I'd like to think I still feel very young at 35, yet I also know that like I'll tell my parents sometimes, I'm like, well, we're just kids. And then they'll be like, you have kids, you're not a kid. And I'm like, okay, but I feel so young. And at the same time, I also look back and I'm like, wow, what, like, I don't know, like I'm just so much more relaxed. And I'm like, why was I stressing so much at 16? But I am who I am.
You are who you are, and that works. I will tell you that my one of my in-laws, this is a while ago, but even like she said in her 70s, she's like, I still feel like I'm, XYZ age. So I don't know that that ever ends. Like it's like we know that we're older, but it's like we are always just the person we are. Somebody's
We are,
smarter
and
than
I'm
me.
definitely a more relaxed version in a good way of who I am. And my husband is kind of the yin to my yang, but I definitely it makes me really great at my job, is what I say. It makes me really good at the thing that I do.
Very cool. So you choose intentionally to go for a medium-sized firm in Atlanta, Georgia. You were coming out of Auburn. Auburn is also in Georgia, right?
It's in Alabama, but it's less
Alabama.
than two
Okay.
hours. So like Atlanta and Birmingham are the two big recruiters from there, right?
Got it. Very, very good. All right. So you do that for a while and you decide to leave that job. And there's a specific story of watching something happen with a coworker that tied you into making a pretty big decision. I'm going to let you tell the story of what you observed and why you decided to leave this career trajectory public accounting job.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's not going to shock you, Amy, that I knew at this firm that the youngest and quickest person to make partner had done it in 10 years. So I was going to do it in 9
You had a
because
plan.
I had a plan and
Did
I'm
you
a
have
high
a
achiever.
checklist or a spreadsheet of the plan? Just curious. A
Probably.
folder.
I used to keep more checklists in my head because I didn't have 4 kids and I could. And now I'm
Yeah.
like, if it's not written down or on the calendar, it's gone. So I had a plan. And I moved around. It's such a wonderful firm, such a wonderful experience, great people. And we moved buildings while I was there. They were growing. It was great. I got to be a part of a lot of that. And when we moved buildings, they put, so we call them bullpens in public accounting, where like you're all just kind of sitting in like cubicles and you're just kind of all out there. So the partners get offices, but all the staff and seniors and just everybody else, we just like sometimes you were literally fighting for a spot to sit. When we moved, they put the partners' offices on the outside of our high rise, but the managers' offices on the inside of the high rise so that light could come in. And we got these low cubicles that, like, just kind of like you could see everybody. So it was kind of cool. And so because they did that, because they put these managers' offices on the inside, they made glass walls so that you could still see in. It was this very open concept. They were getting light. So the purpose I'm telling you that is because I could see into this manager's office, right? So my back was to the windows, facing the interior of the building, looking right into her office in my sea of like 2, 4, 6, 8 cube mates, right? So we're in the thick of tax season, and we're all sitting there chirping away. I was probably about 25, and my husband, he had already been with me through studying for the CPA exam, working multiple busy seasons, studying for the CPA exam. So he was just, we didn't have kids at the time. We had our townhouse, and he would just kind of work late. Then he would go home and do his thing. The firm fed us because if they fed us dinner, they kept us there and we didn't have to leave. So we could continue to billable hours, right? Do more work,
Yeah.
produce more stuff. And so it was 4 nights in to this one week. And for the fourth night in a row, I watched this manager who I love, and she was wonderful and such an inspiration for where she was. She was a senior manager, and she was FaceTiming her 3-year-old son to sleep for the fourth night in a row. She was visibly pregnant with her second child in her belly. And I don't know, and I'm going to come back and tell you something, Amy, that we might have an aha on this podcast. But I had this moment where I was like, I don't want to do that. That is so
Yeah.
sad. I was so sad for her, even though she had chosen, and I don't know if
Right.
she was sad. I have no idea what she was feeling,
Right.
but I
Right.
felt sad
Right.
that was the fourth night in a row that she was FaceTiming her kid to sleep. And I was like, I actually don't want that. And
Right. And I'll just pause and say that because this becomes a controversial pivot or
Mhm.
point between women sometimes with the choices
Oh,
they make. This is just a personal decision.
yes, this is
This,
just me.
right. This is the decision you made. And it's not actually, and I've told plenty of these other stories also, people take the other side of this and they're also happy with it. So it's not a
Yes.
value judgment to make the decision, but your story is that you saw this, and when you saw it, it was able to reflect it back to you, and you were like, "Wow, is that what I want?" And your answer was
Right. And
no.
and it was
Yeah.
you know how sometimes and a lot of the work that I do for our clients is intangible. And so sometimes we really need something tangible that we can see and that we can
Yes.
feel in front of us. And it's those moments when we have something more tangible that it's like, wow. And so
Yeah.
a couple things to note here is that I always thought that I was going to have 2 kids. I was going to have 2 kids. I was going to have them by the time I was 30, 28 and just before
Yep.
30. I was going to have a boy and a girl and a boy, didn't matter. But funny story. I have 4 kids and they're 3 boys and a girl, and I love them, and I couldn't imagine my life any differently. So I realized it was seeing her, and it was also
Yes.
like, you set this goal of making partner in 9 years, right? Which
Yeah.
would have put me at like 31 or something like that, 31, 32. And I was going to have 2 kids. And it's like, you can't have that. Like, if you're going to meet this ridiculous goal of making partner in 9 years, that's your life. Like,
Yeah.
you don't even get to see your husband, much less have 2 kids. But I wanted the kids more. I wanted the family life more. That was more important to me. And I wanted to find a way that I could still have my professional goals, but I wanted the personal goals more than the
All right.
professional goals.
I appreciate that very much. And for some context in like how we make decisions and the value of being able to see it, sometimes that shows up as like representation. Like there's something about being a human being that we cannot always make decisions for things or have opinions about things that we haven't experienced to some degree.
Mhm,
So like
mhm.
you can read all about Mongolian food and think you know what it's going to be, but that might change when you actually try it. And that's just the way it goes. That's just the way it goes. Not
I believe that.
100%
I
true, but
wholeheartedly believe that.
yeah, and we put a lot of judgment on it. Parenthood is one of the things where that is so often the case, right? You think I mean, it's not that people don't tell you.
It is the most humbling
Right.
experience.
It's not that people don't tell you how hard it is to have a newborn, and the sleep. People tell you nonstop for your whole life, and then you
Mhm,
get there and you're like, oh, this is what they meant. I mean, and it happens if you have siblings, and it happens if you're a nurse, and it happens if you're a teacher. Watching it happen to somebody else is one thing, reading about it is one thing, doing it is different. But yeah, so that's very good. Okay, so you make this decision. When you see this, had you already started your family, or or was that in the future?
Yeah, so it's funny that you asked that question because that was the aha that I had. I was like, so we actually didn't find out that we were pregnant until I was 10 weeks pregnant because we were planning to move. We were in busy season. So
Yeah.
like I had a couple signs when I looked back and I was like, I should have probably known this. And so now that I'm sitting, I'm like, this is the first time this isn't the first time I'm sharing this story. This is the first time I'm having this realization that I was actually already pregnant. So who knew if that
Okay.
impacted what I was seeing, even subconsciously, right? Those hormones were probably starting to kick up. I don't know. I was probably 10. I must have been like 3, 4, 5 weeks pregnant, three,
Just
four
like
weeks
just
pregnant, something like that.
barely, just getting
Barely, like
started.
barely. But there was something subconsciously that now I'm
Yeah.
realizing who knows if I would have had that realization. I think I would have, even if I wasn't even barely pregnant, but I actually was, unbeknownst to me, barely pregnant with our first child.
Oh, that is really interesting. All right. So you go on to, there's a couple of things. So you go on to have a medium-sized family. You guys go on to have 4 kids. But you come to this realization that the firm public life is not going to match what you are, your new goals and your new plan
Nope.
of family. And so that's
Nope.
a shift. That's a decision. You make that decision. What you do then is you leave and start your own accounting firm. Do I
Yep.
understand that correctly?
Yep. That's correct.
You achieve pretty rapid success. At the time you're doing this, I think you have one, maybe 2 kids.
Yeah.
Um,
All of this, I just kept having kids
Having
as I
kids
was
and
just
growing
growing
and
the
stuff
business.
like that. So you have a success with this business. You take it to 6 figures. And then I think you experienced some burnout, some stress
Oh,
and
lots.
overwhelm. Okay.
Yep.
So tell us what the burnout felt like, and how you realized that that was what was going on.
Yeah, so I would say it wasn't the first time I experienced burnout. Looking back, we're wiser now as we get older, and we just learn more. And I put a lot into my personal and professional development education. I probably burnt out the first time when I was a junior in high school,
Okay.
because again, I was in all the honors and AP
Yeah.
classes, needed to get A's, not because my parents made me, but because I held myself to those standards. I was in all the clubs. Junior year was when I started becoming president of the clubs and
Yeah.
on the executive boards and all the things. So that was the first time that I really burnt out. Then, so when I went to college, I was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just doing one thing because I needed that break. So once again, by junior year of college, I was in all the things, starting to become in those leadership positions. So I had experienced burnout before, but it had been a while. It had been a hot minute since college when I really started experiencing burnout. And so when it first, and I've experienced it more than once in this business as a CEO, when I first started experiencing it, I was probably a little over a year into the business. I was coming up on having a 1 year old. And I realized that, yes, I had hit 6 figures in 12 months, but I was basically working the hours that I was working, not quite, but I felt like I was almost working the hours that I was working in public accounting. I had way more stress, right? Because anyone who is self employed or runs a business knows there's so much that comes into play when you run this business, when you are the business, when you have clients expecting certain things from you. And by 18 months in, I was burnt out, and I was even considering, is this worth it? Because now I have to pay for all of my licensures and all of my continuing education. And I have to think about all these things. And I'm laying in bed at night, not just thinking about my problems, but all my clients' problems because I care so much and I want to help them and I want to over deliver. And it kind of came to a head where I was like, I have to figure something out because this is not the dream. This is not what I left public accounting for. And I really like the signs were there that I was working more hours than I had planned on. I was missing out on things with my son. And some of it was my own guilt that I created, right, Amy? That like he was home with a sitter, and so I was like, well, if I'm not out working and I hurry home, I can be with him, right? And so
Yeah.
I was trying to be 100% as a mom, as a business owner, as a wife, as a friend, as a 26, 27-year-old young adult. And, I hadn't realized yet that I couldn't give 100% to all of those things at the same time.
Yeah, and when I have this discussion with other people on the show and in real life, one of the things that I like to offer as reflection, and we'll see if you agree with it, is that, you know, first of all, I think burnout is very hard to pick
Mhm.
out in the moment. It's easier to see and name
Yep.
it in the rearview mirror, which a lot of things are like that. You know, in the moment, you're just getting to the next thing. The second thing is that this is not this is not a diagnosis, but the we get a lot of positive reinforcement societally and community-ishness, like from people around us for leaning into all of those things. Like,
Mhm.
so there's a really great, people love to reward the women who are selfless for their kids at school and at home and at fundraising and at work.
Yep.
So it's like if you, it, it's easier than people think to fall into the be all things to all people.
It is.
And if you can't, then you've done it wrong, um, sort of thing. And I'd love to say that that's not happening to the younger generation of women, but I do think it still is because I think that
Absolutely.
it's not, we want to blame the system and we want to blame the tools and we want to blame social media and we want to blame whatever. In the 80s, we blamed magazines and catalogs. There's a piece of this that sort of comes to education and peer support and somebody
Mhm.
showing you, like, hey, even if you think that every woman is supposed to look like a Victoria's Secret model, look around because that might not actually be what your reality is
Yep.
and the awareness that you get to decide for yourself. And so I just always throw that in that it's like, you think I told myself I wasn't going to do it. And it
Mhm.
was looking back and I was like, oh my God, I don't care about some of these things. Why am I doing this? I don't actually
It's
care.
very hard. Yes, and
Yes.
I've actually recently learned, so I have a nervous system regulation coach. So I've, for the
Oh,
last
nice.
probably,
That is
7 or 8
so
years, I've had.
modern. I just have to say, I'd love to go. My dad passed away years and years ago, but I would love to have given that sequence of words to my father in heaven and been like, what?
I always had some form of business coaching, right?
Right. No,
This
no, it's
is this
fantastic.
is this is the most that has like worked on
Yes.
me as a human. And so I've recently learned that I'm a people pleaser. And I've always thought of myself as kind of outspoken, little bit lack of a filter, kind of do
Yeah.
what I want. And I've realized that I'm a people pleaser in the sense that I do want to make everybody happy. I do
Yeah.
want them to think that I'm the best mom and I'm the best CEO and I'm the best wife. And that doing it outwardly is what proves that being room mom and being on the
Yeah.
boards and all the things instead of um prioritizing and saying no.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that.
So I will share with you that based on my own personal experience, and I'm not a psychologist, sociologist, or anybody who's qualified to say this systemically, but I believe that that assessment can shift for individuals. So, and the reason I think that is just my own personal experience. I was a driven, results-oriented person that people, like I was, a leader, but not always a good team player in projects if people weren't on my way.
Hmm.
That was my assessment from teamwork my whole life. And then when I was in my 30s, I took a personality test and they're like, you are a people pleaser. You are a nurturer and a people pleaser. And I was so shocked by that result that I was like, this test is broken. This test is wrong. And I took it
That
over.
sounds like me. It's like
I,
I don't know what you
I
don't know
took
what you're
it
talking
right,
about.
exactly. I took it over and over again. I was like, this is wrong. And then I was in a community where a bunch of people were taking the test, and they were all like, "This is so spot on." Da, da, da. I was like, "What?" And it was a season of reflection for me that I was like, "Why did I do that?" So, but I had changed my life to be. I was in the season of lots of young kids and lots of community things, and I had changed my life and was making my decision for the benefit of these folks that showed up with me being a nurturer. And I support that decision. I understand why I made it. But it's super fascinating to me that like I changed so much that when I took that quiz, I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then now I'm on the backside of that. My youngest is now in college. It's like, oh, I can make decisions for myself again. Yay.
Yeah.
So anyway, just for reflection. Anyway, we're off topic and we're on a tight timeline. So let's keep going because there's another decision that you make here, right? So you've
Okay.
realized you're in burnout. You're doing these things.
Hmm.
There's a part of your pitch that I think is really helpful to know, which is that you're an accountant, You're an engineer. You're financially aware. You shared with me that you knew that your family was a two-income family,
Mhm.
right?
We
So
are still.
two-income family, and that was a part of your budget. Very, very smart decision. You were a solopreneur. You thought that this business was going to just be you, but you
Mhm.
find yourself in a position where you're like, hey, if and I don't know if this is related to the burnout story or not. You can tell me. You realize that in order for this to do what you need it to do, you have to make a decision to, I think, bring on other accountants. Walk me through that decision process if you can, because I think this is a decision that maybe every single solo service business faces at some time.
Yeah, and I can tell you that's accurate because I've seen the behind the scenes for the last 15 plus years, right? I'm also the child of two entrepreneurs. So like I just grew up, this was my life. Dinner was a nightly economics lesson. So yeah, I remember it. I was holding our 3-month-old baby at the time, and our two bigger kids had gone to school, right? They were in like pre-K 3 and kindergarten or something like that.
I
So
thought, if
naively,
you're listening on the audio, I'm chuckling because she put school in finger quotes because they're so little. It's like,
yeah, because they're so
they're
little. They're
so
so
little.
little.
It's like school, which is singing and
School.
art.
Right, but it was all day. They were gonna go from
Okay.
7:50 to 3:10 because in New Orleans, they were in private school at the time, and so it was all day. I was
Yep.
dropping them off at the same place, and I naively thought that because I was now dropping them off, that I was gonna have 7 hours a day, 5 days a week because they were in school. So you're
Yep.
chuckling
Yeah,
because
I've lived this. I've lived this. And
yes.
then
Well,
day
I
two is a
hadn't.
performance, and day three is the flu, and
Yes.
day
So I
five is
didn't know
parent
that
teacher
yet.
conferences. And
I didn't know that yet. So I had to learn that. And I realized, wow, by the time you go in, we had accidents and forgotten lunches. And I wanted to be an involved parent. Let's go back to remember, I wanted to put being a mom just as important equally as my career, right? So I
yes.
wanted to be there for fair dance practice and teacher appreciation lunches and book fair days when parents could come. But by the time I started doing that, we only live 7 minutes from the school. But by the time I started doing that round trip, and I was like, wait, I'm only doing this for two kids and I'm going to have to do this times four. Like,
Yeah.
I'm actually not going to have 35 hours uninterrupted each week to work. And so, like, again, y'all already know how my brain processes. I'm like doing the math, I'm doing the numbers. I'm like, this is not going to work. And to add on to that was for the previous 5 years of my business, right? If I was with the kids, I was checking my phone, emails coming through from clients, calls, texts, all the things. And so I was thinking about work when I was with my kids, and I was thinking about my kids when I was working. And I'm like, what are we like? I don't want to do this for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
This is not what I signed up for. So I kind of was laying in bed. I was holding our fourth little baby. We were done having babies. I thought I was going to have two. So four was already a lot. And I told him, I said, I have to make a decision that I can't keep taking on new clients. I have to stay small and highly profitable like I am right now, or I need to grow the business enough that I can afford to bring on another tax professional. And I have high standards, so that's not like a $30,000 a year hire. That's like a significant payroll amount. And so my sweet husband, always my biggest supporter, he's like, "Well, I just kind of feel like you won't be happy staying small even though you say you will, you won't." Like he knows me. And I didn't feel good about that either. I felt like I didn't want to be thinking about clients when I was with my kids and worrying about if they were being taken care of. I wanted to be able to take a vacation where I could actually take a break and not still have to work on vacation because my clients' businesses were still going. I had some apprehensions because, again, I had helped clients navigate bad employees, bad employee situations, stress of not having enough cash, all the things. But we made the decision together that, I would take this leap of faith. I would figure out the plan. And that was ultimately what led me to the decision to grow the business, which meant, and because that decision that you were talking about, the way that I looked at it, and look, I had been trying to get more time back. Okay. Anybody who has a kid knows, anybody who has more than one kid knows, and you just keep adding on kids and you just keep having less time. I had 4 kids in 5.5 years. Those years are, we call them the lost years. I didn't even know Taylor Swift put out 5 more albums. Talk about like, Amy, how you go back to like, maybe you don't want kids and that's not for you. Talk about like Taylor and I are basically the same age. Talk about two very different lives, right? I'm
Right.
popping out 4 babies. She's popping out 4 multi-platinum albums or whatever. And I didn't
Yeah.
even know it because those are the lost years, we call
Yeah.
them. I just was surviving. And so, what it came down to, so that was towards the end of 2022. So I started coming up with a plan by the end of 2022. I started figuring out like lead magnets and email lists because I was just growing by referrals at that point. I was like, okay, I actually have to like go out and do some active marketing if I want to control who knows about me and how many clients come in. So I spent the bulk of 2023 starting to guest on podcast and putting it out there that, I was going to grow the firm. I wanted to, and it really started selfishly because I wanted to make more money and I was ready to do something for me after spending almost 7 years now giving my body and my life and my brain to these kids, which
Yes.
no regrets there. But I was ready to kind of not put that behind me, but like forge a new path and be like, okay, I can take this on. So basically what happened was I started growing the business. I then took a pay cut and I was able to hire about a year later. Exactly. I was about to hire a year later a qualified person who I pay very well. She has become my ride or die, my right hand. I couldn't do this without her. And from November, so October of 2023, it was just me.
Okay.
November of 2023 was my first hire. We are in summer of 2026, and we now have a 6-person team.
So a system level back office question. Are these employees, partners,
These are
consultants?
all full-time W-2 employees.
That's really fascinating. Okay, one more back strategy question and then we will begin to wrap this up. Um, would you say that in making this decision, I'm writing this question on the fly, so it'll be a little bit long-winded, but would you say that in making this decision to go from solopreneur to a firm that supported employees, it was really a grounds up redesign of how the revenue structure and promotion and everything would work?
Everything. And that
Okay.
was what I was really working on in
Yeah.
that year because again, I'm the numbers person. I've
Yeah.
seen the back ends of businesses. And so I did it the way that most business owners should, but they just don't know any better. And so instead of getting the business, having the broken systems, and then figuring it all out, I
That's
got
the
the
reason I
business,
asked. That's the reason I asked.
put the
Yeah.
systems in place. And look, we're still learning and like
Yeah.
we always have room for improvement. But some of the things that I did, I was doing all customized work. I was constantly sending emails. I was scheduling um uh calendar events back and forth. So I had to do little things like give up control and just have a calendar system where people could book a call with me
Yeah.
based on the open calendar slots. I had to create packages instead of everything being customized, right? I just had to put a price on tax prep for specific types of tax return types, at least a starting point, right? And so our prices are starting at so that if there's complexity, we have some wiggle room. And so, yes, I spent a whole year in addition to getting out there, putting myself out
Yeah.
there with podcasts and some visibility. I also worked on the efficiencies, the operations, and the back end systems in order to make it something that someone could come in and help me with.
Yeah, and the reason I asked is because the training that we give a lot of service-based entrepreneurs is build your solo practice and then scale as if they are two different steps. And I have come to a realization many, many years ago that is very, very hard to do because you are really you're putting yourself in a position to really redesign, and what works at solo doesn't work with scale. So it
You are
might
so
actually
correct. We
be.
could do an entire episode
Yeah,
on my
and that's not the
lessons learned
focus, right? That's not the
from
focus of
that.
this
We could do a
show,
whole
but yeah.
episode on what I would do differently.
Yeah, I just really think that I mean, because you can see it as you watch people like redesign and it's like and people are like, oh my God, she's changing everything, and it's like yeah, I just so anyway that's it, but it's off
And
topic.
it's
It is a
also
different
very
show.
hard for people like me who are like, here we go again. And like, again, I'm
Yes.
working on giving
Yeah.
myself grace because, and like my nervous system regulation coach is like, yeah, but what you built 7 years ago wouldn't work today, right? Like you've got
Right.
to give yourself grace for the pivots and the imperfections as we go along and we
Yeah,
learn.
no, absolutely. And you've done an excellent job of talking about this. All right, so very good. In a second, we are going to wrap this up, but I do want to ask you, what is the thing that you hope that people will take away from hearing your story? What's the reason you like to share your story publicly?
I think why I share my story publicly is because the women that I work with, Amy, they lack the confidence to think that they can do this, that they think that they can have a business, that they think that they can be in charge of their finances and their taxes and take the lead on this. And I am adamant that they can do this, that they should do this, that don't let kids stop you, don't let spouses stop you, don't let the world stop you. If you have a dream, go after it. You can do it as a mom, you can do it if you're not a mom, you can do it if you're a caretaker of elderly parents, whatever your life looks like, and you are so much more capable at the numbers and the finances than you think you are. That's why I'm here to share my story.
I love that. I love that. All right. So you have a special offer for the audience. And for people who are listening and watching, the details of this are always in the audio show notes. They're in the YouTube show description. The easiest way to get the links for these offers is always to be a subscriber to the Imperfect Adulting email community, which I call the Village, because then the links are right in the email. So anyway, there you go. All right. It is a free tax savings calculator, and it's to help people find out how much they're overpaying on business income taxes. It is free, and the link is taxmove.io. All right, so
Okay.
that and all the contact information for Kimberly is in the
And I want to
show notes.
add,
Yes.
remember that you're a business owner. If you are self employed, if you're a freelancer, if you're a digital creator, if you get a 1099 for income, remember that classifies you as a business owner. That's something I'm learning is like people don't identify as a business owner, but they call
Right.
themselves self employed. And I'm like, girl, you a business owner.
Yeah, no, it's a whole thing. It's interesting because it took me in entrepreneurship, I found myself in all these money mindset type things. My dad was a freelancer my whole life, and I was like you were saying, like money was just a thing that was talked about. Like I just
Yep.
people are like, oh, I'm nervous talking about money. I was like, why am I not? And I've tied it back to the fact that it was just something we talked about all the
Yep.
time. But
You and I are so lucky, right? Because
it
we're
is, yeah.
actually the exception, not the rule,
The
especially as women.
exception, right? The exception, and yeah, so 100%. So it's very good. All right, we're gonna wrap this up with our wrap up questions. All right,
Okay.
Kimberly, share with us personal, like at this time in the world, like there's no shortage of information, right? But personal referrals and recommendations are really important in finding the good stuff. Share with us something in the entertainment world, the news world, the information source, a podcast, a book, a movie, a TV show, something that you enjoy that you would like to recommend to the people in the audience.
Yeah, so a book that I recently read that I've really enjoyed is Remarkably Bright Creatures. I've actually gotten back into fiction reading, not just business book reading. And it's funny, I listen to business podcasts and I like to read fiction books, and I
Sure.
loved that book because of the way it ended. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but that's why I loved it. And then, yeah,
That's a
that's a
good
recent
one.
read
That's
that I
a good
loved.
one. Absolutely. That's a wonderful suggestion. It's very entertaining. I will say they personify the octopus to a point that it pushed my boundaries, but there we go.
It did, but I liked the way that it ended because
Yeah.
it didn't end, it didn't come back to make it all like sunshine and rainbows,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that's the part that I liked. It was like not reality, but also not like, well, of course it ended with sunshine and rainbows.
There you go. Very good. All right. This last question I call unsupervised online shopping. What
Okay.
is something that you've purchased online that was pretty great and we should all know about it? Can be big, can be little, can be recent, can be a long time ago, just anything.
Yeah, I feel like I should be able to think of something better that has been more like instrumental in my life as a mom, but truly the Dyson vacuum stick vacuum that charges and doesn't have a cord. As a mom of four little kids who doesn't even have any pets to take care of, I vacuum every night. We have the Robo one, but I still go grab that stick to clean stuff up.
I think that's an
It's just
excellent
so worth it.
suggestion. There's somebody in the audience that's listening that's like, that is what I need in my
I did
life.
not want to buy it. I got it on a Black Friday sale. 'Cause like, I am not spending $300 or $400 on a vacuum. That is ridiculous. And I am like, I'm a changed person 5 years later. I take back what I said.
I love that because when I was young and I got a job, one of the marketing jobs, one of the case studies that was used for like successful positioning and so on and so forth was a very expensive vacuum, and it was a wonderful thing. And the guy who was my mentor, who was like, he's like, I bought it because I had to see why this vacuum was so expensive, and he's like, I still own it because I forgot to return it. It was just, I mean, it was so funny. Anyway, thank you very much, Kimberly, for being on the show and sharing your story today on the Art of Imperfect Adulting.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been great.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Please subscribe wherever you're listening or watching the show. That helps my stats. A request from the bottom of my indie creator heart is to please tell your friends about the show. That is the real way new people discover it. If you feel motivated, I would love it if you rated the show or wrote a review on whatever platform you are using. Please be sure to head over to imperfectadulting.com and sign up for the email community. I call this the Village. You'll get some free stuff right away, and you'll begin to get the weekly emails that I send. This includes the links for special offers from any guests on the show and cool stuff I put together for the community. There's a lot more going on than just this show, and the only way to find out is to get the emails. Plus, you're busy. You don't have time or desire to follow every single tidbit on social media, and you don't have to because I'm happy to send it to you. If you have a story you'd like to share with the audience, I have an open application for guests. Guess where you'll find it? That's right, on the website and in the emails. And that's a wrap for this episode. Until next time, remember that the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now. I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that just may not mean you're lost. It may mean that you're just on your way. And now, the fine print. The Art of Imperfect Adulting podcast and streaming video show is a copyrighted work created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. The music was written and produced by Todd Thompson at Dharma Bomb Studios. All rights are reserved. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy Stone does not intend to hold myself, herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level. Yeah, it's a little weird for me to talk about myself in the third person, but you get the idea. This is Amy Stone, signing off.